My name is
Look, I drew a
Alexander Grant, and
unicorn.
I'm 63
Wow,
years
it has
old
a
now.
rainbow mane. Yeah,
This
and it
story
flies
takes
over a
place 11
castle.
years
So
ago,
cool.
when I was
Look at
52
this
and
one.
learning one of the most
Wow, it's so
important
pretty.
lessons of my
I
life
know,
from the
right? It's
most
my favorite.
unexpected
Mine
teacher,
too.
a
Look,
homeless
this is a
child who had
butterfly.
nothing but gave
Wow,
everything.
it's so pretty.
I'd built
And
my
these are
fortune
its
in
wings.
technology,
I see now.
founding a software
Look,
company in
this
my
one is
20s that
different.
eventually went
Oh, I
public
see.
and
What
made
about this one?
me wealthier
Yes,
than I'd
that's
ever
the one.
imagined possible. By my early 50s, I was a billionaire several times over, with all the trappings that came with it. The penthouse, the cars, the private schools for my daughter, the exclusive clubs and restaurants. My daughter Charlotte was 7 years old then. After my wife died giving birth to her, I'd raised Charlotte with the help of nannies and tutors and every advantage money could buy. She attended the most prestigious private school in the city, wore designer clothes, and had every toy and educational tool available. I wanted to give her everything. I'd never had growing up in a working-class neighborhood. Every opportunity to succeed and thrive. But somewhere in giving her everything, I'd inadvertently taught her that her worth came from what she had rather than who she was. Charlotte had become entitled, spoiled, dismissive of people she considered beneath her. She was rude to our staff, contemptuous of other children who weren't as privileged, and increasingly difficult to manage. Her teachers reported that she refused to work with students she deemed not smart enough, and that she frequently made other children cry with her cutting remarks. I tried to correct her behavior, but I'd been so focused on building my business that I'd left her upbringing largely to others. And those others, well-meaning but deferential, staff, rarely challenged her or set meaningful boundaries. Charlotte was growing up to be brilliant and accomplished, but also cruel and empty, measuring everyone by their possessions and status. That autumn afternoon, I left work early to pick Charlotte up from school, something I rarely did. Usually our driver handled it, but I'd been trying to spend more time with her after her latest teacher's report about her behavior toward classmates. Charlotte's school was in an affluent neighborhood with manicured parks and expensive shops. I arrived a few minutes early and decided to walk to the school entrance rather than wait in the car. As I approached, I noticed Charlotte standing by the iron fence that surrounded the school grounds, but she wasn't alone. Beside her stood another girl, probably around the same age, maybe slightly older. It was hard to tell because she was so thin. The girl wore a dress that was several sizes too big and obviously secondhand, stained with dirt and torn in places. Her hair was tangled and unwashed, and her feet were in sneakers that were literally falling apart, held together with duct tape. Everything about her appearance said homeless or desperately poor. But what caught my attention wasn't her poverty. It was what she was doing. She was teaching Charlotte something, pointing to a notebook she held, explaining something with animated gestures. And Charlotte, my dismissive, contemptuous daughter, was listening with rapt attention, nodding seriously, asking questions. I moved closer, staying out of sight, curious about what was happening. "See, if you move the X to this side," the homeless girl was saying, "then you solve for it here. That's how you find the answer. My teacher showed me that last year before we had to leave." "That makes so much more sense than how Mrs. Peterson explains it," Charlotte said. "You're really good at math." "I like math. It's like puzzles. And puzzles always have answers if you just think about them the right way." The girl smiled, and despite her circumstances, it was a beautiful, genuine smile. "Want me to show you another one?" Charlotte nodded eagerly, and the two girls bent over the notebook together. The homeless child, patiently teaching my privileged daughter concepts she'd been struggling with in her expensive private school. I was stunned. This was not the Charlotte I knew. This Charlotte was humble, eager to learn, respectful. She was treating this homeless girl not with the contempt she showed most people, but with genuine appreciation and friendliness. When they'd worked through a few more problems, Charlotte suddenly asked, "What's your name?" "I'm Charlotte." "I'm Mia," the girl said. "Mia Johnson." "Where do you go to school, Mia?" "You're really smart." Mia's face fell. "I don't go to school anymore. Not since June. We had to leave our apartment, and now we live. We move around a lot. My mom can't afford a place to stay, so we sleep in her car or sometimes at the shelter when there's room. I used to love school. I was in the gifted program at my old school." Charlotte looked stricken. "You can't go to school?" "But how do you learn things?" "I read books from the library when I can." and I practice math in my head. And I remember everything my teachers taught me before. She gestured to the notebook. I found this notebook in a trash can. Someone had only used a few pages, so I used the blank pages to work on problems and practice writing. That's not fair, Charlotte said with feeling. Everyone should get to go to school. I know. Mom says maybe when she gets a job and we get an apartment, I can go back to school. But that hasn't happened yet. Mia looked down at her worn shoes. I come here sometimes after your school lets out. I like to hear the teachers teaching through the windows, and sometimes I can see the math on the chalkboards. That's how I learned what I just showed you. I saw Mrs. Peterson teaching it through the window last week. And I figured out how to do it. My heart was breaking. This child was so hungry for education, so naturally gifted, that she stood outside school windows to catch glimpses of lessons, worked math problems in a notebook she'd retrieved from the trash, and now was teaching the daughter of a billionaire concepts that expensive private tutoring hadn't successfully conveyed. Do you want to come to my school? Charlotte asked suddenly. My daddy's really rich. Maybe he could pay for you to go here. Mia laughed, but there was no bitterness in it. That's really nice of you to offer, but schools like this cost a lot of money. Thousands and thousands of dollars. That's what my mom said when we walked past here once. She said even if we weren't homeless, we could never afford a place like this. Charlotte looked thoughtful. Well, my daddy can afford it. And you're way smarter than most of the kids here anyway. You should go to this school. I decided it was time to reveal myself. I walked up to the fence where the two girls stood. Charlotte saw me and her face lit up. Daddy, this is Mia. She's teaching me algebra and she's really, really smart. And she should go to our school. But she can't because she's homeless and doesn't have money. I knelt down so I was at eye level with both girls. Mia immediately stepped back, fear crossing her face. She'd clearly learned that adults in expensive suits weren't usually kind to homeless children. It's okay, I said gently. I'm Charlotte's father. I'm not going to hurt you or chase you away. Charlotte's right. You're clearly very intelligent. How old are you, Mia? 9, she said quietly. I'll be 10 in February. And you taught yourself algebra by watching through windows? She nodded, still wary. That's extraordinary. Do you like other subjects besides math? I love reading. And science. I used to love everything about school. Her voice cracked slightly. I miss it so much. I made a decision in that moment that would change multiple lives. Mia, where is your mother right now? She's at the library. She goes there to look for jobs online and to stay warm. I'm supposed to meet her there at 5. I checked my watch. It was 4:30. Would you allow me to drive you to the library? I'd like to meet your mother and talk to her about something. Mia looked torn between hope and learned caution. What do you want to talk to her about? About you going to school. And about how I might be able to help your family. People don't help people like us, Mia said matter-of-factly. They tell us to get jobs or go away. They don't want to see us. Well, I'm not most people. And Charlotte's right. You're too smart not to be in school. Will you let me talk to your mother? After a long moment, Mia nodded. We drove to the library. Charlotte and Mia chattering in the back seat about math and books and science. I watched in the rear view. Mirror as my daughter, who'd been so cruel to other children, treated Mia with genuine warmth and respect, asking her opinions, listening to her answers, sharing her own thoughts without condescension. At the library, we found Mia's mother, Sarah, in the computer section, filling out online job applications. She was probably in her mid-30s, but looked older, worn down by circumstances. When she saw Mia with two strangers, alarm flooded her face. Mia, who are these people? It's okay, Mom. This is Charlotte from the private school, and this is her dad. He wants to talk to you about something. Sarah looked at me with suspicion and exhaustion. If this is about Mia hanging around the school, I've told her not to bother the students. We'll leave. We won't come back. No, please, I said. That's not why I'm here. I saw Mia teaching my daughter mathematics that Charlotte's been struggling with despite expensive tutoring. Your daughter is exceptionally gifted. I'd like to help her continue her education. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. We don't need charity. We're doing fine. Mom, Mia said quietly. We're not doing fine. We slept in the car last night because the shelter was full. You haven't eaten today because you gave me your food, and I haven't been to school in 5 months. Sarah's composure crumbled. She sat down heavily, putting her face in her hands. I'm trying. I'm trying so hard, but it's never enough. I lost my job when the company downsized. Then we lost our apartment. I've applied for hundreds of jobs, but no one will hire me when I don't have a permanent address, and childcare costs more than minimum wage pays. I can't afford to work. What did you do before? I asked. I was an office manager. I'm good at organization, scheduling, managing multiple tasks. But all those jobs want someone with a fixed address and professional clothes and references from recent employment. I don't have any of that anymore. An idea was forming in my mind. What if you did have those things? What if I could help you get back on your feet? Not as charity, but as an investment in your family's future? Sarah looked up at me with a mixture of hope and disbelief. Why would you invest in us? You don't know us. I know your daughter is brilliant and deserves an education. I know you're working hard to provide for her despite impossible circumstances. And I know that my own daughter, who's been spoiled and entitled, just showed genuine kindness and respect to Mia, something she hasn't shown to anyone in months. That tells me there's something special about your family. Over the next hour, in a quiet corner of the library, Sarah and I talked. I learned about her journey from stable employment to homelessness, about the cascade of setbacks that had destroyed her financial stability, about her desperate efforts to maintain some normalcy for Mia despite their circumstances. I made her an offer I would provide temporary housing, help her get professional clothing and transportation, and give her a job as operations manager for my charitable foundation, which genuinely needed someone with her skills. In exchange, she would work hard, rebuild her independence, and allow me to pay for Mia's education. This isn't charity, I explained. This is me recognizing talent and potential in both you and your daughter and choosing to invest in it. I expect you to work hard, to be professional, to treat this as a real job with real expectations. And I expect Mia to take her education seriously and to continue being the kind of person who teaches others what she knows. Sarah was crying openly now. Why? Why would you do this? People have walked past us for months. They've ignored us, yelled at us, called the police on us for existing in their neighborhoods. Why would you help? Because your 9-year-old daughter taught my 7-year-old daughter not just algebra, but something more important. That intelligence and worth aren't determined by how much money you have or how clean your clothes are. Mia treated Charlotte with respect and patience, even though Charlotte has everything and Mia has nothing. That's remarkable character, and character deserves to be supported. I looked at Mia, who was listening intently. And because a child who finds a notebook in the trash and uses it to practice math, who stands outside schools to hear lessons through windows, who teaches other children, because she loves learning, that child deserves every opportunity to develop her gifts. That conversation 11 years ago started a relationship that has enriched all our lives immeasurably. Sarah started working at my foundation and proved to be one of the most capable people I've ever employed. She moved from operations manager to director of programs, using her own experience with homelessness to design more effective support systems for families in crisis. Mia enrolled in Charlotte's school and thrived. She graduated as valedictorian 6 years later, then went to university on a full scholarship, majoring in mathematics and education. She just completed her doctorate in mathematics education and now develops curriculum for underserved schools, ensuring that students from disadvantaged backgrounds get the same quality of math instruction as privileged children. But the most profound change was in Charlotte, watching Mia succeed despite having started with nothing, seeing how intelligence and character could exist without privilege, understanding that kindness and generosity meant more than possessions. These lessons transformed my daughter from an entitled, cruel child into a compassionate, thoughtful young woman. Charlotte is 18 now, starting college with plans to study social work and education policy. She volunteers weekly at homeless shelters and tutors children from low-income families. She and Mia became best friends, and that friendship taught Charlotte more about empathy, gratitude, and real human worth than any amount of money could have purchased. Mia taught me that being smart or accomplished doesn't make you better than anyone else, Charlotte told me recently. She had every reason to be bitter about what happened to her family, but instead she used her gifts to help others, starting with teaching me algebra when I was struggling. She showed me what real character looks like, Sarah and Mia moved out of the temporary housing I'd provided after 18 months. Having saved enough to afford their own place, Sarah insisted on paying me back for the initial support, though I'd never expected or asked for repayment. "It's important," she explained. "Not because I don't appreciate what you did, but because I need to know we can stand on our own. You gave us a hand up when we needed it most, but we built our lives back through our own efforts. That matters." She was right. Dignity matters. Self-sufficiency matters. The goal was never to create dependence, but to provide a bridge over an impossible chasm, allowing a gifted child and her hard-working mother to reach the other side, where their talents could flourish. Now, 11 years later, I look back on that afternoon with profound gratitude. I'd gone to pick up my daughter from school and instead found a homeless child teaching her mathematics through an iron fence. I could have dismissed it, driven Charlotte away, told Mia to stop bothering students at a school she couldn't afford. That would have been easier, more comfortable, more in line with how society often treats homeless children. Instead, I watched and listened. I saw intelligence, patience, generosity, and character in a child who had every reason to be bitter or defeated. And I chose to invest in that character, to provide the opportunities that would allow both Mia and Sarah to thrive. The return on that investment has been immeasurable. Mia's research is changing how mathematics is taught in schools across the country, ensuring that children from all backgrounds receive quality education. Sarah's work at the foundation has helped hundreds of families escape homelessness and rebuild their lives. Charlotte has become a compassionate, engaged citizen who uses her privilege to help others. But beyond the tangible achievements, there's something more valuable: the knowledge that we're all connected, that a billionaire's daughter and a homeless girl can teach each other, that wealth and poverty don't determine worth, that sometimes the person who has nothing to give materially can give gifts that change your entire worldview. Mia taught Charlotte algebra that day, but she also taught both of us, that intelligence exists everywhere, that potential isn't limited to privileged children, that the homeless girl outside the fence might be brilliant and kind and deserving of every opportunity. That's what stunned everyone who knew the situation. Not that I'd paid for a homeless girl's education. Wealthy people make charitable donations all the time. But that I'd recognized what she had to offer. That I'd seen teaching Charlotte through a fence not as an imposition, but as a gift. That I'd understood my daughter needed what Mia could give her more than Mia needed what I could provide. Because ultimately, it wasn't a one-way exchange. Yes, I provided housing and employment and education, but Mia provided something equally valuable. She reminded Charlotte, and me, that true wealth isn't measured in dollars but in character, intelligence, kindness, and generosity of spirit. She had nothing material to offer. But she taught my daughter not just algebra, but how to treat people with respect regardless of their circumstances. She showed Charlotte what real intelligence looks like, not the entitled assumption of superiority that comes from expensive schools, but the genuine love of learning that makes you teach others what you know. And she taught me that the greatest investments aren't always financial. Sometimes they're human, recognizing potential, supporting talent, removing barriers that keep gifted people from contributing their gifts to the world. That afternoon outside Charlotte's school, I saw a homeless girl teaching my daughter through an iron fence. I could have driven away. Instead, I stopped, listened, and changed the trajectory of multiple lives. That's the real lesson, that we all have the power to change trajectories, to recognize potential, to invest in human talent regardless of current circumstances. We just have to be willing to see what others overlook, to value what society dismisses, to recognize that sometimes the teacher appears in unexpected forms. Mia was 9 years old, homeless, standing outside a school she couldn't afford to attend, teaching a privileged girl through a fence because she loved learning, so much that she couldn't help but share it. That's the kind of character that deserves investment. That's the kind of spirit that changes the world. And I'm grateful every day that I was wise enough or lucky enough to recognize it when I saw it.